ladies and gentlemen. This is Dr. Frank Chase back with you one more time. Uh, yes, I have been sharing a lot of tithing videos over the years. And in this particular video, I want to just share some excerpts. I call them book bubbles, and give you some kind of background on why I wrote a particular paragraph or a chapter. I'm not going to read whole chapters, but why I wrote a particular excerpt and give you some insight. And I hope some of this information about the book gets you interested in studying this subject, because if you don't study tithing, you are missing out on a lot of good information that could save your financial future and basically your financial life. And I'm not just saying that for effect, but truly understanding the biblical tithe is most important in knowing where your money should be going and how you should give money. So I'm going to share a few excerpts in this particular session, in this particular video, and I'm not going to make these pretty long. I'm going to probably share two excerpts, and these are quick things you could just focus on and read in your leisure time and come back and study. One of the first ones I want to share with you is and this particular insight is hold on here. I'm doing this from my from my computer, so I'm trying to read it to you and do the same thing. So in this particular one that I'm going to share, let's see. That's one I'm going through here, and let's see which one I'm going to share. Well, this first one here is, will a man rob God? So, and I know you hear that particular sermon every Sunday, and I want to read you an excerpt from my book considering that question, will a man rob God? And then I'm going to share some author insight with you on this matter. And here we go. Will a man rob God? Yet you have robbed me, but you say, in what way have we robbed you? In tithes and offerings. You are cursed with a curse, for you have robbed me, even this whole nation. Bring ye all the tithes into the storehouse, that there may be food in my house. Pay attention to that. Food in my house. And try me now in this, says the Lord of hosts. If I will not open up the windows of heaven for you and pour out for you such a blessing that there will not be room enough for you to receive. And I will rebuke the devourer for your sakes, so that he will not destroy the fruit of your ground, and shall the vine fail to bear fruit for you in the field, says the Lord of hosts. And all nations will call you blessed, for you will be a delightful land, says the Lord of hosts. So let's continue to read on for some of this. It says, the thought that God promises abundant blessings and rewards for tithing money is hard not to believe, ladies and gentlemen. However, when you examine the scriptures, do tithes and offerings really translate to money? Can we apply tithing, crops, and cattle as it did in the Hebrew nations eons ago to tithing money today? If you are scared of Malachi's curse, you won't be after reading and understanding what follows in this chapter. Dismantling the argument for tithing using Malachi starts with proper interpretation principles. The belief that you must tithe on gross or net income is where the confusion begins. Depending on who is teaching the subject, some will say the tithe is on gross pay, and others say tithing is on net pay. Both are actually wrong. The second problem is that for hundreds of years since the 6th century, the early church and subsequent denominations have been unable to convince the majority of Christians throughout the ages that tithing money actually works as taught. The third problem with using Malachi to justify the net tithe argument or the gross tithe argument is that many people don't receive the abundant blessings they heard about. And that's a fact, ladies and gentlemen. Since tithers remain poor their entire lives after tithing for years, while others seem to experience economic growth, that sounds like God is showing partiality. Let me make this perfectly clear. Understanding the tithe in Malachi cannot be done unless you read the entire book for context. Malachi must be read alongside Nehemiah because Nehemiah gives details that help explain Malachi. Both Malachi and Nehemiah lived during the same period, and both were dealing with the issues of tithing in Israel. God is speaking to the Hebrew people of Israel. Oh, let me read that again. God is speaking to the Hebrew people of Israel, or is he speaking to you in Malachi? I'm sure you have heard many things or many tithing sermons that will blow your mind. Most of the money focused interpretations sound so good, you can't help but walk away from the offering plate thinking, wow, God will turn this tenth I paid into so much money that I won't be able to contain it. What many unsuspecting believers don't realize is that most tithing sermons are compilations of various tithe teachings thrown together. Over time, this hodgepodge of tithe sermons become traditions of men. Today, most tithe sermons are elevated to the status of commandments of God, and what you end up with is a hyper-spiritualized version of Malachi 3:8-10. Roger Sapp, in his book, The Christians Are Free Givers, Roger Sapp, in his book, The Children Are Free, gives a perfect rendition of what most people hear in their spiritual ear when listening to tithe sermons. You might hear something like this spiritualized version from the pulpit. Bring, as an act of worship, the full amount of your tithe, 10% of your ongoing income, into the storehouse, the local church, that there may be food, spiritual food, in my house, the local church. And prove me now, presently, by it, put me to test. Give me an opportunity to prove myself, and you will see that I will open the windows of heaven to you and pour you out so much financial material blessing that you will not have room enough to contain it. Then I will protect your income from the devourer, the devil, for you. I will stop the thief, the devil, from destroying the fruit, money, material good of your labors. This rendition sounds good and appeals to our material senses because we all need and want more money for many reasons. When you examine the spiritualized version of Malachi with an eye on proper exegesis and hermeneutics, you can see the spiritualized version is totally out of context. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to come right back, and I'm going to share my author insight on this. And as you can see, this excerpt from my book is powerful because that spiritualized version of Malachi is totally non-scriptural. We are back, ladies and gentlemen. I hope that book excerpt helped you a lot in understanding the question of, will a man rob God? So what we're going to do now is I'm going to share some author insight with you on that excerpt from my book and give you a kind of taste of maybe why I wrote that particular excerpt and give you some more insight into the excerpt. So here are my thoughts about, will a man rob God? So I first start out by saying, to answer this question, And to put the suspense to rest, no believer today robs God of tithes and offerings unless they are farmers and ranchers in Israel under the covenant of the law. The words, "Will a man rob God?" has an immense psychological impact in churches because many believe Malachi 3:10 requires 10% of their paycheck to be paid to God through the vehicle of the institutional church. Could you imagine my shock? And this is me, ladies and gentlemen, my shock when I discovered that monetary tithing is not the subject of Malachi chapter 3. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, your paycheck is not a tithable commodity. In chapter 10 of my book, you will also discover that the storehouse the tithe was brought to is not a church, but a barn for storing crops and cattle. The words robbing God can have a lasting impact on how you handle your money. Many sermons address Malachi 3:10, and pastors will make it their primary goal to ensure you cough up 10%. To make sure you do not hold back, you'll be called a God robber, and the fear of that label drives many congregants to pay up. Almost sounds like a mafia boss, right? But know this, your money is not a biblical authentic tithe. Paying 10% to the church resembles a temple tax or tax return giving. And that's my book bubble for today. And I'm going to come back and share another one with you in just a moment. But this one is ended for now. So chew on that for a moment and consider it. Will a man rob God? We'll be right back in a new video. Thanks.